Good Friday morning, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and read on our YouTube channel this morning, and I will also read live on our Google Meet. So you can stay on here and listen if you join me live, or you can wait till your Google Meet at your certain time. This is for the people that I know won't be able to join us today. So yesterday we left off with Worm and Max jumping on a train, and then they were attacked by some wild dogs and got saved by Hobo Joe, our new character. We're going to read chapters 18 through 20 today. And 18 starts off with, keep us safe with you-know-who. That's what the skinny little dude calls himself, Hobo Joe. He's got long, scraggly hair and scruffy old clothes that are way too big for him. And when he smiles, his teeth are kind of crooked. Also, he's got this wispy little mustache that wiggles when he talks. And he's talking so fast I can barely sort out the words. Yes, sir, they call me Hobo Joe, and I'm sorry about them dogs. I bet they gave you a fright, and I should have warned you because that junkyard's famous for a pack of wild dogs. That's right, I seen you two get on back there in Iowa, and I says to myself, now, Joe, they'll want to rest a bit, so you best wait until morning before you drop by for a visit. See, I've been riding up 3 cars, a nice empty boxcar with a pile of hay to sleep on. It's better than the Ritz Hotel. Got me a room with a view and room service too. Hey, I bet you two ain't had breakfast. Am I right about that, huh? Am I? Excuse me, I ask, because listening to somebody talk that fast makes my ears ring. Food, he says, breakfast. I got it if you want some. Breakfast is this great big can of beans that Joe has been heating up over a sterno can when the dogs attacked us. Now he heats it up again, and pretty soon the smell of simmering beans is thick in the air. I know what you're thinking, he says. You're thinking a can of beans don't make a breakfast, but that's where you're wrong, because beans is the best kind of food, especially when you're hungry. Normally, I could care less about beans, but we haven't had a thing to eat since supper last night, and the sight of those beans bubbling away makes my mouth water. I ask Worm if she's hungry, and she nods, and Joe shows her how to blow on the spoon so she won't burn her mouth. These beans got special vitamins, he says, make you grow big and strong. He's got this old canvas bag he keeps his stuff in, and inside is a loaf of bread, stale bread with hard crust, but Joe says it'll soften up good in the bean juice, and we tear up the bread and soak it and stuff it in our mouths until we can't eat another bite. If you're hungry enough, stale bread and beans taste better than birthday cake. While we're eating, Joe never stops talking and moving around, like he's got batteries inside that make him keep jumping and fidgeting and twitching his fuzzy little mustache. Guess for breakfast, he says, who'd have thunk it? And he rattles on about how lonesome it gets living on trains, and how he's glad of the company, and how good it is to have someone to talk to because mostly he talks to himself, and how talking to yourself doesn't necessarily make you crazy. It just means that there has to be an exception to every rule. And he, Hobo Joe, is the talking to himself exception. After we spoon up the last of the beans, the boxcar gives a shudder and starts moving again. They've been shunting off some of the freight cars, Joe explains. That means they unhook them and leave them behind. Train will be lighter now and faster. By the time we clear Nebraska, we'll be flying, yes, sir. He knows so much about trains because he's been living off the land, he says, and riding the rails from one side of the country to the other and then back again. So he knows what train goes where and why it stops at one place instead of another, and how not to get caught by the railroad police. Don't be thinking I'm homeless, he explains to Worm. Wherever I'm sleeping, that's my home, and I like it fine. He points at the wide open door of the boxcar and the prairie grass rushing past like a blurry green river. Can you beat that? Why, it's better than TV. It sounds strange, but staring out at the countryside really is better than watching TV, because you never know what you're going to see next. Farms and barns and windmills, tall silvery silos that look like spaceships ready to take off, railroad bridges built from giant erector sets, a herd of buffalo that look like cows with fur coats on. There's even some purple mountains way off in the distance, just like in the song about America. Everything keeps moving. It never settles into one thing. It keeps moving and turning into something new. You don't need to change the channel because it keeps changing itself and never stays the same. After a while, I feel like I'm getting hypnotized, like I'm wide awake but dreaming, like the train is standing still and the world is turning under us. Worm, she gets tired of watching the world go by and takes out a new book. This one is called The Sword in the Stone. I know about it because Kevin read it and told me the story before I could read on my own. It's about this kid who everyone thinks is a real loser until one day he accidentally pulls this sword out of a stone, and that proves he's going to grow up and be King Arthur. This excellent dude who has a posse of knights in shining armor, slaying dragons and rescuing damsels, which are what they call women in the old days. You know what's so cool about King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, Worm says to me? It's all about fighting for honor and protecting the innocent and never giving up even if the whole world is against you. I go, yeah, that's pretty cool. The coolest thing is they call it Chivalry, Worm says, sounding excited, and that's where we're going, Chivalry, Montana. She acts like this is a big coincidence, but I'm pretty sure she knew about knights and chivalry, and that's why she picked the book in the first place, so it would remind her of where we're headed. You sure your dad is there? I ask her. For some reason, that makes her mad. You don't believe me? Is that it? You want me to swear on my grave? Okay, I swear on my grave, my father is in Chivalry, Montana. I go, okay, take it easy. Joe hears her and butts in. Chivalry? That where you two are headed? Worm glares at me and then nods. Yes, she says, most definitely. Then you come to the right place, Joe says. This train don't go there exactly, but I know one that does. And you'll show us? Of course I will, he says. But it ain't exactly right around the corner. We got a good long while before we get there. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to catch up on my beauty sleep. Joe fluffs up his canvas bag like it's a pillow and stretches out his skinny legs and closes his eyes. Pretty soon you can hear him snoring, and it blends into the sound of the train. Worm taps me on the shoulder. Sorry I got mad, she says. I go, that's okay. It's just that I miss my mom, Worm says. Sure, I say, that's only natural. The worm looks fierce. I miss her, but I hate her guts. I go, huh? It's her fault, Worm says. She didn't have to marry that creepoid or let him hurt me or lie to the cops. She's scared of him, I say. People do stupid things when they're scared. But she's my mom. Moms are supposed to take care of you. I don't know what to say. Moms aren't supposed to die either, but sometimes they do. Everything will be okay if I can just talk to my dad, Worm says, my real dad. He'll understand. Don't worry, I say, we'll find him. Then everything is quiet except for the clickety sound of the train and the wind humming by. It's so quiet I can hear my own heart beating, and it seems to go rackety-roo, just like the train. After a while, Worm tugs on my arm and says, you hear that? It sounds like giants talking under the earth. At first, I think it's just another weird thing she got out of a book, but then I start to hear it too, a low rumble that seems to come off the mountains and roll over the plains. You can't quite make out the words. You can't tell if they're just talking or fighting, or maybe the giants are singing and it all sounds like earthquakes and avalanches from far, far away. It's like they're calling us, Worm says in a whispery, soft voice, trying to tell us something. I'm listening so hard, my ears are hot, and finally I figure it out. The rumble noise from the train is echoing off the mountains. That's what makes it sound so hollow and deep. It's not giants talking under the earth. It's only the lonesome sound the train makes as it goes through the world. But I don't say anything, and Worm keeps listening, and she's smiling to herself like she knows what the giants are saying, and it makes everything okay. I can't hear the giants anymore, but there's a song coming from inside the train. Rackety-roo, keep us safe from you-know-who. And you-know-who we know is the Undertaker. And I was thinking about it when I was reading just a few minutes ago. They've been gone probably about a week now. So you have to imagine that Worm's mom and Grim and Graham are extremely worried. Chapter 19, Wide Open Country. Joe wakes up fresh as a daisy, he says. He leans out the door of the boxcar and takes a sniff and goes, Wyoming. I can smell Wyoming just around the bend. Better than perfume. Smells like dirt and tumbleweeds. He says he's been through this way before, but he never gets tired of it. I love this wide open country, he says. I bet you can see 100 miles at least. See that mountain over there against the dark patch of sky? Seems so close you could hit it with a rock, don't it? Just you try. You could walk all day for a week and still you wouldn't be close. What is it about the West, the real West? The scale is different. The sky is higher up and wider open, and that makes everything bigger. Makes a man look to himself because there's nobody else can see him. Yes, sir. So we roll on into Wyoming, and Joe says that the train is probably making 60 miles an hour, just humming along, running straight into the horizon, and nothing around but a few scrubby pine trees and these far off mountains that look like somebody painted them against the sky. Every now and then the train stops, and Joe always knows where we are and why we stopped and if we should change boxcars. They got to fuel up those diesel engines, he'll say, or they're picking up a 10-car hitch out of Casper. Pretty much every time we stop, Joe disappears for a little while and then comes back with some kind of food. He never says exactly where he finds it, but when you're hungry and riding the rails, you don't ask too many questions. He'll heave up this big sack of oranges and go, "Nobody will miss these little beauties. Got to get our vitamins." Maybe he'll bring back a box of stale crackers and a big restaurant tin of honey and give it over to Worm and say, "Nothing wrong with these crackers a little honey won't fix." Thanks to our skinny friend, we never get so hungry we can't stand it. Hang on just a second. Oh, never mind. Not that the Worm eats much, but Joe bets I could win one of those flapjack eating contests where a bunch of lumberjacks eat until they bust. It ain't just a hollow leg with you, he says. It's a hollow everything, which means you're still growing. Pardon me, son, but if you get any bigger, you're going to need your own time zone. For some reason, I don't mind it when Joe kids me about being big. Maybe because he's so small and scrawny. Maybe because he doesn't have much of anything. But he always shares it without making you feel like he's doing you a favor. And he never asks what me and Worm are doing on our own or tries to give us a bunch of advice about what we should do and why. Most important, anytime Worm looks a little sad or unhappy, Joe is right there working to cheer her up. "Look over there," he says, getting her attention. "No, farther out. You see that thing moving up and down? Looks like a big tipped over swing set? That's an oil pump. That's right, they're raising oil out of a deep well. They'll put a pump like that wherever they find oil. Once I seen one in a churchyard. Talk about an answer to your prayers." Worm stares out at the horizon. "They look like giant birds pecking at the dirt," she says. When Joe hears that, he doesn't make fun of her. He just nods to himself and goes, "I never thought of it that way. Giant birds, huh?" We're heading out through the wide open spaces for hours and hours. Pretty soon we'll cross over into Montana, Joe says, where the last of the cowboys live and the mountains reach all the way to the moon. And that's where we change trains to Chivalry. Joe says we're on the right track, yes, sir, and it feels good. The way night happens out west, the sun kind of disappears all at once, and suddenly the stars are shining and the air feels thin and cool. Worm's got herself real comfortable on this pile of hay Joe fluffed up, reading with her miner's light, and before long her chin starts to droop, and then she's fast asleep. I shut off the light to save the battery, and Joe brings out this old wool blanket and covers her. Me and Joe are both shivering a little, but it feels good watching Worm sleep so calm and peaceful under that warm blanket. "I guess you know she's pretty special," Joe says. I don't say anything because I hate gooey talk like that, but it makes me think about how sometimes you meet someone who really messes up your life, but you'd rather have a messed up life than not know them. Hey, hang on just a second, guys.
Do you have anything for your Christian, any of the Bible?
Nope, it's all online for me. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're awesome. I appreciate it. That was Miss Salazar, guys. She says hi. Anyhow, everything will be okay if we can just find her father. And because we got lucky and bumped into Joe, now we're headed into the right direction. I never do fall asleep. There's something wide awake inside my head that makes me think of Grim and Graham and how much I miss them and how rotten it was for me to run off without telling them why or even saying goodbye. I keep thinking how much they've done for me and how I never did anything much for them except a couple of lame presents at Christmas or whatever. When the sun finally comes up, I'm still thinking about home and how there's no place I'd rather be but hanging out in the down under and reading my comic books for the umpteenth time. So I'm already feeling pretty low and down and sorry for myself when Joe tells me the bad news. We're almost there, he says out of the blue. I go, huh? You kids want to get to Chivalry, right? Well, I got you on the right train. All you got to do is ride it to the end and you'll be there. But what about you? I ask. You're coming too, right? Joe shakes his head. I got business elsewhere. He says, I got to keep moving. I can't stay still. Which shows you what a donut brain I can be, because I've been thinking somehow we'd stay on the train forever and just keep riding through the wide open spaces. And Joe would always be there to tell us where we were and what was going to happen next. The train starts slowing down and gets so slow you could walk beside it. There's apples in that tin can of American cheese, Joe says, getting ready to go. I left a big can of beans, too. What about your blanket? I say, looking at where Worm is still curled up and sound asleep. Better keep it, he says. Before he hops down from the boxcar, he says, here's the deal. In about 100 miles, this train dead ends in Chivalry. I hope you find what you're looking for. Then he slips over the side and he's gone. The last thing I hear is his voice sounding far away already. Yes, sir, he calls out. Don't forget them beans. They got vitamins. So Joe got them on the right track, but he's not going to stay with them. He's got business elsewhere, fidgety. Chapter 20, Chivalry. So remember, I asked you guys before, do you guys think they're going to make it to Chivalry? Chapter 20 kind of lets us infer that they're going to make it, since the title of the chapter is Chivalry. So let's find out. We're alone again when Worm finally wakes up. I dreamed I was home in my own bed, she says. Then she stops herself, like there are parts of the dream she doesn't want to talk about. I explain about Joe leaving and how the last stop is supposed to be Chivalry. When I say how everything will be okay once she finds her real father, Worm stares down at her hands and won't say anything. Which really blows my mind, because she's supposed to be happy and excited, right? Worm has never been a big talker, but the closer we get to where we're going, the less she says. Like she's got this big secret and not talking is the only way to keep it all to herself. Meanwhile, the train takes a long time rolling up toward the end of the line, moving along in fits and starts. Every time we stop, I lean out real careful and take a look around, and sometimes I spot these railroad guys waving their arms and shouting out orders. If they suspect anybody is sneaking a ride on their train, it's like they don't care or they don't want to know. The mountains are right up close around here. You can see where they start and how they jut up so fast and steep it makes you dizzy looking all the way to the top. The mountains seem like they're made of yellow dirt and yellow rock and a few scrawny looking bushes here and there. Like nothing can grow on a place that steep without falling off. One time the train stops inside a tunnel and it's so dark it might as well be midnight. Worm switches on her light, but she isn't reading. She's using it to look at me. I had this weird idea that we all disappear when the lights go out, she says. Not just you, but me too. I go, that's weird, all right. Like they say, maybe there's no such thing as noise if there's no one to hear it. Who says that? I ask. Just they, she says. I don't know who. Well, they sound pretty stupid to me, I say, which ends the conversation right there. Worm switches off the light, and I figure she's hoping I really have disappeared. I'm thinking, what am I going to do with a girl who doesn't know what's real and what's just in her head? I'm thinking, here we are in the dark, stuck inside a mountain in a place I've never been, and we're about 1,000,000 miles from home, and we don't have the dippy hippie to help us, or Hobo Joe, or anybody at all, and I haven't got a clue about what to do. That's when my brain says, I told you so, you moron. And my brain is right, because it's been telling me all along that running away was a big mistake. After a while, Worm's voice comes out of the dark. Are you still there? I go, yeah. Good, she says, and then she shuts up again. Suddenly, the train goes bump, bump, and starts moving again, and we slowly come out from under the mountain and back into daytime. At first, the light makes me squint so hard I can't really see anything, but pretty soon I can make out these shiny roofs and a bunch of chimneys and stuff. We're looking down on this town full of junky old wooden buildings stuck right up against the bottom of the mountains. There's only one road, and it's just plain dirt, no paving. The roofs are shiny because they're made of tin, but when you look closer, you can see streaks of rust and dark spots that must be holes. There's a couple of old trucks, but the hoods are up and they look broke down forever. I keep expecting to see people going in and out of the buildings, or maybe kicking the tires on those old trucks. But the only thing moving is a broken door slapping in the breeze. It looks like everybody just walked away from Chivalry and never came back. I always wondered what a ghost town was. Now I know. That's the end of chapter 20. So they did actually make it to Chivalry. Will Worm's dad still be there? If so, what will happen? If he's not, what will they do? Remember, Hobo Joe said the train dead ended in Chivalry. So if the train leaves, what are they going to do? We will pick up with chapter 21 on Monday, and it's called What the Owl Knows, the animal, the owl. You guys have a fantastic weekend. Don't forget, the first 9 weeks ends on Thursday, October 15th. We will have several virtual days that week, and I will remind you again. But if you guys have work that you owe me, whether you're traditional or virtual, please get that done this weekend. I will be posting new assignments on Monday for virtual students, and I will see you traditional students in person on Monday. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye-bye.